Meeting's going to be starting in a couple of minutes. Let's please bear with us. Thank you.
Thank you for waiting. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this work action meeting of the Bogota Board of Education of Tuesday, April 18th to 2023. Please stand for the flag salute. Yeah, everyone. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Bogota Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Bogota Borough Hall, communicated by letter to the record, filed with the clerk of the Borough of Bogota, and posted to the Bogota Board of Education website. Mr. Irfan?
Sure. Mrs. Alvarez,
Present.
Mr. Alvarez,
Present.
Mr. Chavez, absent. Mrs. Cruz,
Present.
Mr. Navarro,
Present.
Mrs. Olivo, absent. Mr. Ortega, absent. Ms. Rackett,
Present.
Mr. Miranda.
Present.
We have the quorum.
Thank you, Irfan. Also present, Superintendent Damian Kennedy. No student council representative today, Board Attorney William Sukis, School Business Administrator and Board Secretary Irfan Afzal, Assistant Board Secretary Elizabeth Ruiz. May I have a hearing on citizen, I may have a motion, a hearing of citizens and agenda items only.
Motion.
Mrs. Cruz, do I have a second?
Alvarez.
Mr. Alvarez, any board discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
If there's any member of the public who would like to discuss agenda items only, please state your name and a street address. You have 5 minutes. Do I have a motion to close citizen remarks on agenda items only?
Motion.
Ms. Rocket, is that Alvarez? Mrs. Alvarez, a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to superintendent's report, Mr. Kennedy.
Okay, a couple things first. For our HIB report, since our last meeting, there was one investigation in the high school that was unfounded. Also, a reminder, there is no school this Friday, as we are off for the Muslim holiday Eid al-Fitr. Also, I would like at this time to announce that our teachers of the years have been selected for each school building. Before the break, they were notified, but just to notify everyone here and the public, in the high school, Miss Enriquez; in the middle school, Miss Demetrakis; in Bixby, Mrs. Ketchum; and in Steen, Mrs. Skrinage. So this is the first year in a long time that we're actually going to be celebrating with the county. Because of COVID, they eliminated, there's a nice luncheon for all the teachers of the years at Bergen County, which will be in May. Also, reminder, next week, we have another board meeting. That will be our budget presentation. And then just also a referendum update. I have a meeting on Thursday with Irfan, with the architects to have a bigger report. But my understandings right now is We're in the process of getting the fields surveyed. That went through the town and was approved to have the survey. Then the design process will begin. And in April, or in May and June, we will look to start selling the bonds. The idea is to sell the bonds in June because we want that first payment to be July 2024. So that's why the bonds will be sold in June. So next week I'll have a bigger report, but also after that architect meeting on Thursday, we're going to be looking to get building and grounds together. And tomorrow night also, we have a diversity committee meeting to try to plan a multicultural night at the end of the school year as well. So we will have more information next week as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. For the record, we have Mr. John Ortega in our meeting, Irfan, as he was in the wrong link initially. For some reason, now he's on. Today is last day for tax season, so get your taxes in. That's why Mr. Chavez isn't here this evening, and Ms. Olivo reported as well not being able to make it. Moving on to section 4.3, approval of agenda items 4.1 and 4.12, 4.2, which includes minutes of March 14th, work action meeting, and March 28th, regular meeting, open session. Are there any comments or corrections? Moving on to 5.1, which will move past section 5.1 of the policy section of the agenda, as nothing is listed. Moving on to resolution 6.8 in the education section of the agenda, approval item 6.1 through 6.7. Is there any board comments? Moving on to 7.6 in the personnel section of the agenda, which is for approval 7.1 through 7.5. Is there any board comments? Moving on to section 8.7 of the finance section of the agenda, approval of agenda items 8.1 through 8.6. Is there any board comments or suggestions? Thank you. We have nothing on 9.1. Moving on to committee reports. Is there any committee reports this evening? Moving on to old business, 11.1. Is there any old business the board would like to discuss? Moving on to 12.1, new business. Is there any new business we'd like to discuss? So I'll make it brief. Mr. Kennedy and I spoke briefly. We will be calling upon some of the committees, building and grounds initially, and then the finance committee. Personally, and I'm sure as a board, we're looking to move things forward with the very excited referendum that passed, and Mr. Kennedy just brought it up. So we're going to move. I know a lot of people in the community are requesting and answering. I think I had someone tell me, when are we putting a shovel in the ground? Not one, but a few. So just be patient. There's a whole process to this, but we're on it. Moving to 13.1, I'm going to open the floor for hearings of the public on any items addressing the board. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Mrs. Rocket, do I have a second?
Alvarez.
Mr. Alvarez, is there any board discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any member of the public who wants to address any item with the board, please state your name and street address. You have 5 minutes. Do I have a motion to close hearing on citizens' remarks?
Motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Rocket. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any board, Mr. Alvarez, any board discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This evening, we do not have any executive session. Thank you very much. Well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Mrs. Cruz, do I have a second?
Second, Idalia.
Mrs. Alvarez, all in favor?
Aye.
Have a good
Aye.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.